Protecting our students and staff from outside threats is our topic today on the Inside Scoop. Hello and welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm still David Owen. Today's topic can be an emotional one, no doubt. When we're talking code red alerts, it's all on the line. Cobb Schools backs up our commitment to safety by hiring experienced professionals who know the best strategies to keep everyone safe. And one such professional is our guest today, Emergency Management Specialist Pete Saxton. Pete, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we dig into the details of this topic, tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and the experience that you bring to your position.
Well, I came originally from Cobb County Police. I worked there over 24 years, most divisions, but I geared myself towards the bomb squad. I commanded the bomb squad the last several years of my career, but also worked in the area of Homeland Security, primarily critical infrastructure protection.
Okay.
So that was for the metro area, but for Cobb County especially, and it brought a lot of education and training to me that is very helpful in the school environment, I found, because we're protecting critical infrastructure, power grid,
water supply,
transportation, all that.
Stuff
but
like that.
When you apply it in a school environment, of course, Cobb County especially, school is a very big piece of the infrastructure for our county. So we can apply those same principles here to protect our infrastructure, because that's also people that you're protecting, as well as, hard brick mortar buildings and things. So
it's our most critical infrastructure.
Exactly.
It's our future.
Yeah, your students and your team are huge. So
yeah. Well, what is your primary focus of your position? Emergency management.
It's the same thing as you would see in emergency management for at the state or county level. You're working with your partners. We don't work in silos. We try not to work in silos.
Yeah.
So we partner a lot with our Cobb Police counterparts, Cobb Fire, the Sheriff's Department, local city police and fire officials, and also the emergency management agencies of those jurisdictions. So, and that leads us to the state level, because we work with them as well. So a big part of the emergency management is trying to protect, but also prepare for response should it be required.
Yeah.
And to have those relationships with partners before anything happens that you need their assistance. As far as another aspect of that, which is a little bit of an offshoot of emergency management, but it goes back to that critical infrastructure. We're trying to look at our facilities, our procedures, and always look at those and see if we can improve those. We learn not just from things that we experience, but also what other locations experience, because you don't want to never lose those lessons if you can get them.
Right.
So a big part of it is also helping, let's say, our schools with their drills. That's a huge part, because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, and you respond locally to protect yourself against things that could happen. And that's a big part of it, is to assist them as well, because they're educators. They shouldn't have to think about these things, but they do, because they're a player in it. So
I think the superintendent has said that that's part of his job, is making sure that all the other stuff outside the classroom is taken care of, so that they inside the classroom can do what they're best trained to do, right?
Exactly.
When we're talking about threats from outside of the building, what kind of threats do we have to be prepared for?
Well, everybody, especially in today's climate, you watch the news and somewhere in the country there's some type of violence going on, either on a campus or near a campus, something like that. But the things that affect us, such as severe weather, tornadoes and those types of things, still are threats to us. So we have to prepare for those, not just in how we respond to it, but how the school responds to it.
Right.
And of course, they're so adept at those drills because they've done them forever.
Yeah.
And so the inclement weather, our schools are part of the community. So things happen around those schools in the community, not necessarily on campus, but they do impact our schools.
Yeah.
So we have to be prepared to take those actions necessary to protect ourselves while there might be a hazard or a threat, because when we talk about threats, hazards and threats can come in many different packages.
Right.
But a lot of times the way you prepare, by sheltering in place, those kind of things, that's kind of a methodology for all kinds of different threats that might be outside your school.
Right.
When we start talking about especially code red or lockdowns as we see them in the paper and all that, that is not just a methodology for someone who has a weapon or something on campus. It could be anything. It could be an unknown situation where you just want to protect everybody.
Like where somebody's maybe getting out of hand behaviorally.
Yes. And we have visitors that have no intent to harm anybody on campus, but they do sometimes, I guess I would say, lose restraint on their emotions once in a while.
That's a polite way of putting it.
But those things can cause a lot of anxiety in students and staff.
Oh, sure.
They just don't realize how they're acting out impacts those around them.
Right.
And a school is no place for that, really, because we try to limit that anxiety because we want that to be that safe place for them.
Yeah. Well, and that even would apply to like after school events and I mean,
very much so.
Okay.
Yes.
Like ball games and
ASP,
sort of
after school programs, stuff like that.
Yeah. Does every individual school have its own plan?
I guess a good way to put it is you have a problem. There's kind of a general way to deal with that problem.
Uh-huh.
So that would that'd be the case for the school district. We'd have a procedure for dealing with that type of problem. But every school is different. So they have to take into account those nuances at the school. So we plan at the district level as well as at the school level because, again, every school is different. So where we move folks, the partnerships we have outside the school to where we may have to evacuate people,
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. That's very much local school community. So we have that type of planning at the school level, but we also have the global planning for those, just how to deal with those big problems.
Kind of the big picture approach.
Yeah.
A minute ago, you mentioned things happening in the community that might cause a threat to a school or the people inside a school. And that would be, that's a different type of lockdown, right? Code yellow?
And you see it in every school district. The terminology is kind of common across the country, we found, but
Okay.
there's things where you want to make sure that everybody, if the threat is closer, there's procedures for that. That's one of the reasons we use the lockdown, because it lets you get people into a safe place or away from the area where something bad could happen very quickly.
Uh-huh.
But also when something happens in the community, you've got some time to prepare.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we can do that without having to interrupt the school day.
Yeah,
we just
that's
take some extra
ideal.
precautions to protect someone from coming onto campus and
Yeah.
getting to where they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of scale.
So I would imagine it might even be possible for students to be oblivious to a code yellow almost, right? Because that would be what the administrators going around and making sure all the doors are locked,
making
and
sure
closed.
the house is secure.
Yeah.
And now they are notified because everybody needs to be made aware, because
Yeah.
the unknown is the big thing that causes anxiety.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
you kind of need to know why you're doing, or why you might see people doing things.
Mhm.
But it also, to know that somebody has actually noticed the situation and taking action also relieves anxiety.
Yeah.
So we want them to know that things happen, because you don't want to keep them blind. But especially if it could impact them, because it may transition. You never know how bad something off the campus might become. So,
Yeah.
or if they run onto your campus
Yeah.
with ill intent. So you want them to be aware and available to respond if we need to change how we're dealing with this situation. So,
It seems like the past few months I've heard of maybe one or two occasions where maybe Smyrna police, for example, were chasing somebody who was suspected of a crime, and they go into a neighborhood near a school but not on the school campus. That's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yep.
So how can the school, how can the students and staff know that they're ready if something happens?
The schools do a lot of their own drills. They practice much more regularly than just us coming in to assist them. So
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people think you march up to the door and start yelling and
no,
scaring everybody.
that goes back to we don't want to cause any undue anxiety.
Right.
So when there's a drill, no matter who puts it on, a voice they recognize, typically the principal, lets them know that we're going to do a drill. So they know that we're practicing. We will watch them on camera. And so we can see the response and we can see how well they do it.
Oh, you're talking about on the security cameras?
Yes.
Okay.
So we always want to help make them better if we can.
Yeah.
But we were really surprised because our students do a really good job of responding to those types of announcements.
Yeah.
And part of that's because they have information. Every classroom has some information about what you need to do for these types of things and what these announcements mean. So they see it every day. So it's like invisible learning. You're exposed to it and you recognize it, and it's reinforced by the teachers and staff. And then it's even more reinforced when you do your drill.
Yeah.
So you have the info, then you see the outcome of it. That's why it's important.
So when I was growing up, I came right after the whole careful. I know where you're going. No, it wasn't the Civil War. It was a little while after that. The Cuban Missile Crisis stuff had happened a few years prior to my era, and there were things called duck and cover drills, which that generation kind of took it in stride. We didn't have to do that, but is that essentially the kind of thing that active shooter drills have become to this generation, that they're so accustomed to the proper response that they just do it?
Our children of today are much more sophisticated than we were back in the day, so they understand a lot more of the climate that they live in, the world they live in. They just have a better understanding. And
all that information coming at them, probably.
And so they know why I think it's important. So I think that's why the information they receive, they take to heart, I think, because we don't see youngsters running around the hallways or lagging behind in the hallways when they have this type of drill. They do what they're supposed to do. So now they might lag behind when they're told to go clean their room or whatever.
Right.
But when these things happen at school and there's a drill, or unfortunately if there has to be an actual response to something, they do very well.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring as a parent to know that they're not behaving as the teenagers we know them to be.
Their children do well.
Okay.
They really do.
All right. Well, time is always a critical component of any of these events, right?
Yes. Always.
So we've heard about the alert badges. Tell us about how they play a role in reducing the response time for you guys getting there and dealing with whatever the threat is.
Well, there's always a point where time is working against us, and it's always at the start,
right?
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So the biggest thing is once somebody, no matter whether it's a student, staff, whatever, learns of something happening, it needs to be ran up the flagpole really quick, because that gets that response ball rolling. What the badges do is it not only notifies the responders to get that ball rolling, it also notifies staff and students to take their actions as well. So you're working basically at the same time to handle this problem from your own angles.
Right.
We're going to respond to whatever threat or hazard. They're going to respond by protecting themselves. And we've saved a lot of time in that process because we can get that message out really fast.
So it's not like I would imagine before the badges, somebody would have had to get on a walkie-talkie or run to the front office, tell an administrator. Administrator gets on an intercom,
make a phone call, whatever.
Make a phone call, and so that's a lot of precious moments that would be lost there. So who has the badges?
Every permanent employee has a badge. So it's teachers, custodians, food and nutrition. Everybody that has a permanent position there has the badge. Okay. And it which is important because all those eyes being able to see things is much more helpful than maybe 10, 15 sets of eyes at any given time being able to see. And they're all over the building or outside a lot of times. So if they can get that word out that quick, it just, again, it really helps put time back on our clock, and it turns that, it makes it an inverse situation. It gives us more time once that message is made. Everybody's made aware of it.
Yeah.
Staff, students, us as responders, and also bad actors, because especially if someone comes into your building with intent to do harm, but they realize I'm being sought after already because somebody here saw me and put up the flag. Yeah. And we know you're here. We're coming to take care of it. And that takes all the time off their clock. And that's where we want to be. Yeah. And the badge really helps us get there.
I could imagine that might even throw them into a state of confusion just with the panic response that we all tend to have.
I've seen that in an actual event.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So where do the badges work? Just within the building, or are they all over the campus? Or
so it's meant to encompass the school,
the entire,
not just the building, but the school. Because you do, again, you said, you have outside events,
right?
Things of that nature. You want to be able to use it there as well.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about how employees learn how to use the badges.
Initial issue is when they are first taught, because it's very simple. I mean, there's not a lot of nuts and bolts to it. It's very simple to use.
Right.
So they get that initially when they come to their school, because that's where they're issued from, is at the school.
Okay.
Because they work for that school. Generally, that's how it works.
And that's at the beginning of the school year when they come back,
or whenever they come to us. Because those employees that come to us in the middle of the year or whatever.
Yeah.
That's just when they have to address it at the school level.
Okay.
And they maintain accountability and all that there. So.
Now, I've also heard that these badges help with the location on a campus, alerting, like in J Hall or whatever, wherever the badge was activated. Is that an accurate thing? It
helps us know where it was activated and where they may go to, because getting to where the bad things happen or the concern, because it may not be severe, but it's still, somebody needs some assistance.
Yeah.
And the quicker we can get there and know where it's at is huge.
Okay. And I know it's also available for just calling staff. If you use it a certain way, it only calls staff members for things like maybe a student fight or a medical emergency, that sort of thing. So that's an extra.
That's where we see a lot of uses for medical situations. Yeah, it's huge because schools can use it for internally for staff, and that's where we see it used much more than globally. But it's a tool not just for the one problem. It's a tool for a lot of different issues that schools face.
So how should one of these events occur, how can parents and other members of the community help?
Well, a big one is to fight the urge to come to the school, because we always want to go to the school.
Your baby's there.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind that you're not going to see your baby right away, because we can't let them out into danger to come to you.
Right.
We're going to protect everybody, get our response, and there's going to be a lot of folks responding. Hundreds. That's not an exaggeration. There'll be hundreds of officers there.
Yeah, but earlier you mentioned coordinating with other agencies. I mean, you mentioned Cobb County PD, but and the sheriff's office, but every jurisdiction like Marietta and Smyrna and Ackworth or whomever, if they're available, they come running.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Okay.
When they're aware, and the thing about Cobb County is we're all on the same radio system, so it's not hard to make everybody aware.
Yeah.
And they're coming.
Wow.
And that's the big thing about not coming to the school, because one, we have to be able to get those responders to the school, and we can't
stay out of the way.
The least amount of traffic we have to deal with, the better.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things to deal with once you get to the scene, to make sure everybody's safe and secure, and then take care of the threat or hazard. And it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of people, and the fewer problems we have to deal with, like a lot of parents trying to get onto the campus into harm's way, we can't protect everybody.
Right.
So our goal is to protect those folks on that campus, but we can't have people interjecting themselves because they'll be in harm's way that we may not be able to protect them.
Yeah, you would have to devote some officers just keeping the parents back instead of being in the
And that keeps us away
to,
from dealing with the situation we need to deal with.
Yeah. So what else can they do to help out with the situation?
Well, be wary of the what you hear, because it's hard to know what's factual, even for us, because it's always so fluid initially.
Yeah.
So it takes a while for us to even realize what is true and what's Memorex or false.
Oh, you're dating yourself there.
Yes, definitely. But that's the big thing, is there's so much information that goes out, because you've got children in the school putting out information, which we found is 180 degrees from what actually occurs.
Most times, the rumor mill inside.
Yeah, we've got gunshots. Well, there were never any gunshots.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So because they're locking down, they don't know what's going outside their room, but they're locked down and they're very anxious.
Sure.
And so you fill in the gaps a lot of times, because that's the only person you can talk to is whoever's on the end of that phone a lot of times. So be wary of the information you get, because you don't truly know if it's accurate. You need to get it from a source, from us, from somebody that's in an official position to be able to put that information out, and realize that that might be preliminary and it may change, because our understanding of what occurred may be different once we figure out really what happened.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot of investigation also to figure out truly what happened beyond that response.
Yeah, to weed out the false stuff from the facts.
Yeah. Who all the players were, what their intentions were, all that. So it takes a while to figure that out, and that can only be done after it's stabilized.
Yeah.
So I know everybody's crying for information. It's critical, but it's worse getting inaccurate information and having to change gears on that and come back to what really happened.
Yeah.
So it's anxiety you really don't need. So don't take that information and run with it. I guess the best way to say it.
The hardest thing in the world for a parent to do is be patient, and that's what we're asking, right? To be patient during a time when everything in you says the opposite.
It serves a better purpose, because your children may not stay there. We may have to move somewhere else to get away from that location,
right?
Just to better stabilize them,
depending on the circumstance, of course.
Exactly, and that way we can have the parents go where they need to be to get to their children sooner. The last thing we want is somebody driving around trying to figure out where my children are.
Right.
So make sure you listen to the right source, and we'll let you know where you can see your children again.
Yeah.
And all that. So we'll let you know that. But somebody on social media might not have a clue. And
even news outlets, and some of the best ones, they may very well be well-intending and trying to get you all of the correct information, but sometimes they do get it wrong. They are human, and so having that good news source is appropriate, information source, I should say, is very important in that sort of a situation. Yeah. CTLS, I think, also is a big part of that picture. Well, thank you so much, Pete. You have been phenomenal. We're excited about the fact that you are here with all of the experience you bring to bear, and also to know that you and the other, 70 or 79 officers in the Cobb Schools PD, separate police department, are on it. And you are so well attuned to the needs of schools that it really helps thwart issues going from a small issue into a much bigger one. So thanks again. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate it. We have discussed things that you can find on the Cobb Shield page of the district's website, and that link will be included in the description and show notes of this podcast. And if you like what you've learned today, please make sure you give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Share it with a friend too. All of these things help the algorithms get this information in front of the people that need to hear it. So as always, thank you for listening to this edition of The Inside Scoop, a podcast produced by the Cobb County School District.